He's the man millions have come to know as Jesus in The Chosen, a symbol of faith, peace, and divine purpose. But behind the scenes, Jonathan Roumie carries a quiet longing, one that might just surprise you. At 50 years old, this global icon is still single, not by accident, not by failure, but by choice and conviction. As the world watches him walk in the footsteps of Christ on screen, the real man is walking a journey of his own, a deeply personal search for love. But the question is, why hasn't he found her yet? What is he waiting for? And could this be the year that everything changes? For someone who carries the weight of portraying the Son of God on screen, Jonathan Roumie walks a uniquely personal path. The man we see healing the sick, comforting the lost, and confronting darkness in The Chosen is just as quietly courageous off-screen. As his fame grew and his portrayal of Jesus captivated millions, people began to ask not just about the actor, but the man. And the most common question of all, how is this man still single? 50 years old, no marriage, no past relationships made public, no gossip, no scandals, just silence. But not the empty kind. Jonathan's singleness isn't rooted in loneliness or rejection, it's rooted in faith. Deep, unwavering, sometimes painful faith. In his own words, Jonathan has said that he refuses to compromise his beliefs for the sake of just being in a relationship. He doesn't date for the sake of dating. And unlike most celebrities who fall in and out of relationships like it's part of the job, Jonathan's eyes are fixed on something higher. He believes love should align with God's plan, and until it does, he waits. But that doesn't mean he's not searching. In fact, he's been praying for his future wife for years. This isn't just about desire, it's about destiny. Jonathan has admitted in interviews that his past dating experiences didn't work out because his faith wasn't always the foundation. And now, that's the one thing he refuses to let go of. He's said, "I would rather stay single for the rest of my life than be with someone who doesn't walk with God." Those words cut deep, not just for fans who admire his commitment, but for anyone who's ever waited for the right person. And here's where the suspense grows. Behind the calm smile and the sacred role he plays is a man who battles doubt, just like the rest of us. A man who sometimes wonders if he's missed his chance. And yet, he doesn't waver. He's called his single season one of preparation, not punishment. And while the world watches him play Jesus, Jonathan is quietly preparing his heart to be a husband one day. He's made it clear that he's looking for someone who can walk beside him in ministry, in faith, and in life. Not someone perfect, but someone intentional. A woman of prayer. A woman who understands what it means to carry a calling bigger than yourself. And he's not shy about saying it anymore. He's opened up about the pressure of being single in a world that constantly asks, "Why aren't you married yet?" Especially when you're a man of faith. Especially when you're the face of one of the most beloved biblical shows in the world. But Jonathan doesn't see singleness as shameful. He sees it as sacred. And that's what makes this story even more compelling. Because now, something has changed. He's hinted more than once that the time is drawing near. That he's been feeling a stirring in his spirit. That maybe, just maybe, the woman he's been waiting for is closer than ever. And with his upcoming projects, including a romantic comedy titled Solo Mio with actress Allison Hannigan, fans are beginning to wonder, is Jonathan about to meet the one? Or has he already met her? And is keeping her hidden from the public eye? That's where the mystery deepens. Because while Jonathan is open about his faith, he remains extremely private about his personal life. He's never confirmed a relationship, never dropped names, but his words are filled with longing, with hope, with the kind of anticipation that feels like the quiet before a storm. And for someone who plays the Prince of Peace, that storm might just come in the form of love. Would you recognize Jonathan's future wife if you saw her? Could she be someone famous, someone from the set, or maybe someone completely unknown to the world but known to him through prayer? The suspense isn't just about if Jonathan will find love. It's about how it will happen. Because if there's one thing we've learned from watching The Chosen and from watching Jonathan, it's that God's timing is never random. And love, when it finally comes, often feels like a divine appointment. So the next time you see Jonathan smile on screen, remember, there's a love story waiting behind that smile. A real one. One that hasn't been written yet, but one that might begin sooner than we think. Behind the camera, Jonathan Roumie isn't just playing Jesus. He's living out a journey that feels, at times, just as lonely, just as sacred, as he walks the path of his character, preaching love and sacrifice. In real life, he's waiting for the kind of love that doesn't just excite, but transforms. And what makes his story even more powerful is the silence he keeps. The kind of silence that makes people wonder, is he hiding heartbreak? Has he loved before and lost? Or is he truly saving his heart for one woman, one marriage, one forever? We may never know the full truth. But what we do know is this: Jonathan has made a vow, not just to God, but to his future wife. A vow to wait, a vow to grow, a vow to become the kind of man who can lead his household in prayer, not pride. And in a world where dating apps, fame, and temptation surround him, he still chooses faith over flash. That's rare. That's real. That's Jonathan. And now, whispers are growing. Fans have started to speculate whether his work on The Chosen has opened doors not just spiritually, but romantically. People have noticed how he speaks about his future with more confidence, how he smiles a little differently when he talks about love and marriage, how he mentions praying for a woman who will understand what it means to live under the weight of a calling, because he doesn't want someone to be impressed by him. He wants someone to stand beside him, not in front, not behind, but beside, as an equal, as a warrior of faith. And let's be honest, it's not easy to find someone who's both grounded and graceful, someone who sees beyond the actor and into the soul, someone who isn't overwhelmed by the fame, but humbled by the purpose. And yet, that's the exact kind of person Jonathan is praying for. Not someone rich, not someone famous, just someone faithful. He's said it before, quietly, in passing: I want someone who can walk this road with me, who gets the mission, who loves Christ more than she could ever love me. That kind of love, it's not for the faint of heart. That kind of love requires spiritual fire. And that's what keeps us watching him so closely, not just on screen, but in life. Because whether he realizes it or not, his fans are not just watching The Chosen for the story of Jesus. They're watching Jonathan's life unfold, like a modern parable. A man set apart, a heart waiting in the wilderness. A story just waiting for its next chapter. And as his career grows, so does the sense that something is about to shift, that the season of waiting may be coming to an end. But if you ask Jonathan, he'll tell you it's not just about finding someone to love. It's about finding someone to serve God with. Marriage to him isn't about fulfilling personal desire. It's about fulfilling a divine purpose, a spiritual union that becomes a witness to the world. And that's why he takes it so seriously. That's why he's still single, because he knows that the wrong relationship can derail a calling, and the right one, it can launch a legacy. That's what he's waiting for. A woman of legacy, a woman of fire, a woman who, when she walks into his life, will not compete with his faith but will complete it. And now, something else has entered the picture. His upcoming romantic comedy, Solo Mio, where he plays a character navigating love in the most unexpected of ways. Some say this is just acting, just another role. But others can't help but feel, maybe this is Jonathan's heart reaching out in another way. Maybe this project is a whisper of what's to come. Maybe love is closer than we think. Because for a man who's spent years telling the story of Jesus' love for humanity, maybe it's finally time for Jonathan to experience a love of his own. Not just one written by a screenwriter, but one written by the hand of God. The suspense of his story is not in what we know, it's in what we don't. Who is she? Where is she? Has he met her already? Or is she still a prayer waiting to be answered? All we know is that Jonathan's heart is open, his prayers are steady, and his story, it's far from over. The next chapter could begin tomorrow or in a year. But when it does, we'll all be watching. Because this isn't just a love story, it's a faith story. And the world is quietly holding its breath for the moment when Jonathan's waiting finally ends. Asterisk. As the cameras roll and The Chosen continues to grow into a global phenomenon, Jonathan Roumie's personal journey stands quietly in the background, untouched, unrevealed, and yet somehow more captivating than ever. While millions admire his portrayal of Jesus, very few realize just how deeply that role mirrors his own life. He's not just acting out scenes of sacrifice and devotion, he's living them. And when it comes to love, his story is nothing short of sacred. Because this isn't just about a man looking for a wife, this is about a man refusing to let the world define what love should look like. He's not chasing chemistry, he's not following feelings, he's following God. And that alone makes him different. But it also makes you wonder what kind of woman could carry that kind of weight. Who could stand beside a man whose entire life is built on ministry, responsibility, and devotion? Jonathan has hinted that he's been hurt before, not by scandal or betrayal, but by disappointment. Times when he thought he had found someone, only to realize they weren't aligned spiritually. Times when he prayed for clarity and got heartbreak instead, but instead of growing bitter, he grew stronger. He's even said in interviews that God has taught him more in his singleness than in any relationship he's ever had. That silence can be holy. That waiting can be worship. And that love, the kind that lasts, is always worth the cost. Still, there's a longing in his voice when he speaks of the future, a quiet ache that slips through even his strongest moments. He's not just waiting for a partner, he's waiting for his person, the one he's prayed for, the one who will see him not as the man who plays Jesus, but as the man who seeks him. And while he keeps his private life incredibly guarded, there have been small signs, moments of vulnerability that reveal just how ready he is. Like the time he said, "I've prayed for her. I don't know who she is yet, but I know she's out there. And I know God is preparing her. Just like he's preparing me." That single sentence has haunted fans and followers ever since. Because it's not just romantic hits divine, it's the kind of love story that feels predestined. And it raises a deeper question. What if Jonathan's love story is meant to inspire others the same way his role in The Chosen does? What if the very reason he's still single is because the world needs to see what waiting on God actually looks like? And then there's the added weight of fame, being a household name, being adored by millions, and yet still being unseen by the one person who matters most. That kind of loneliness doesn't fade, and the spotlight tick grows. And Jonathan has admitted that sometimes he wonders if his platform is part of the delay. That maybe God needed to build his character before building his love story. That maybe his heart had to be broken, humbled, and reshaped before he could ever truly give it away. These aren't just ideas, they're convictions. The kind that make you sit still and listen. Because Jonathan doesn't talk about relationships the way most celebrities do. There's no gossip, no glamour, no games, just prayer, just hope, just obedience. And with The Chosen now entering some of the most emotionally intense chapters of Jesus' life, betrayal, arrest, and crucifixion, can't help but wonder if Jonathan's own life is preparing for a resurrection of its own. Could love be coming? Could this man, who's given so much of his life to portraying divine love, finally be stepping into a season where he receives it for himself? The idea alone sends chills, because we've seen him weep as Jesus. We've seen him break for others, on screen. But what would it look like to see him fall in love for real? And would he even tell us? Or would he, in his signature way, keep it sacred, protected, and only reveal it when the time is right? That's the mystery that keeps fans guessing. And perhaps that's exactly what Jonathan wants. Not to keep people in suspense for drama's sake, but to protect something holy before it begins. Because if and when that moment comes, when he meets the woman who's been written into his story long before the fame, long before the roles, he won't just be ready, he'll be sure. And that's what makes this story different. This isn't a man searching the world for love. This is a man letting love find him in God's perfect timing. No shortcuts, no substitutes, just faith, patience, and purpose. And maybe, just maybe, the wait is almost over. There's a quiet kind of tension that surrounds Jonathan Roumie now. Not the kind born from controversy or career pressure, but something more intimate, more human. It's the tension of waiting, of knowing the world sees him as a symbol of unwavering strength and holiness, while he still returns home each night to silence. 2 prayers whispered into the stillness. 2, an empty dinner table. And though he rarely speaks about it directly, the weight of that waiting shows, especially when he talks about his future. Because for Jonathan, marriage isn't a checkbox. It's a covenant, a spiritual union meant to mirror Christ and the church. And that's why he can't just settle for good enough. He's waiting for a partner who will not only share his life but carry the burden of his calling beside him. And when you carry the weight of portraying Jesus, that burden is not light. But this is where it gets even more mysterious. There have been moments, rare but telling, when Jonathan has hinted at divine signs, dreams, feelings, even quiet encounters that left him wondering, was that her? One interview stood out where he said, "Sometimes, I think God shows us glimpses of what's to come, just to remind us that he's listening." What did he mean by that? Did he meet someone who stirred something deep in him? Did he walk away from a connection because the timing wasn't right, only to wonder if he'll ever see her again? The answers remain hidden, but the suspense is undeniable. Because when a man who has devoted his entire life to faith says he's had glimpses of something or someone, you listen. And you wonder if his story is about to take a turn. And then there's the pressure from the world. Fans who adore him, followers who feel connected to him because of his role. Many of them see Jonathan not just as an actor, but as a spiritual leader, a man they trust, a man they look to for strength. So imagine the weight of revealing a relationship, what that would mean, not just for him, but for the woman beside him. She would need to be strong, grounded, humble, not overwhelmed by his fame, not intimidated by his following, not distracted by the lights. She would need to see the man, not the icon. And that's why Jonathan is still waiting, because that kind of woman isn't common. And when you're building a life of purpose, you can't afford to link your soul with someone who isn't equally prepared. He's even said, I want to build something that lasts. I want to raise a family in faith. I want a home filled with prayer. Those words don't just reflect desire. They reveal readiness. A man who has waited, a man who has grown, a man who has sacrificed worldly pleasure for spiritual pursuit. And now, a man who may finally be stepping into the season he's prayed for. Could it be that his upcoming projects, his growing platform, and his deepening vulnerability are all signs of a shift? That the silence is about to break? That the love story he's waited for, fasted for, prayed for, is about to begin? And if that's true, one has to wonder, will we recognize it when it happens? Will he announce it? Or will he, in his quiet way, drop a single line in an interview that changes everything? A subtle mention, a shared smile, a woman at his side whose presence says more than words ever could. Because let's be honest, Jonathan isn't the kind of man who needs to prove anything. When the time comes, he won't shout it from the rooftops. He'll live it. In faith, in gratitude, in sacred reverence. For now, we watch. We wait. Just like him. But the feeling in the air is different lately. Fans are noticing the change. His words are more hopeful. His tone, more expectant. It's as if the long winter of singleness is nearing its end and spring is finally on the horizon. But who will she be? Will she be someone from his past, someone we've never seen? Or someone who's been quietly standing in the wings, waiting just as patiently as he has? That's the great unknown. That's the part we can't predict. And that's what makes Jonathan's story so powerful, not just because of what he's done, but because of what he's still waiting for.